Hey everyone, Chris Bennett, your blockchain beard guy here. I wanted to talk for a few minutes about the fallout from last week's SEC enforcement actions against Coinbase and Binance. A couple stories in the news, all thanks to Axios, that I wanted to spend just a few moments talking about. The first talks about why all this is such a big deal. And I think this quote kind of nails it perfectly. Hopefully, I'm saying the name here. Jeremy Senderowitz, lawyer at Vedder Price, he says, this is where, talking about the SEC, they take the most detailed position with analyses as to why these tokens are securities. One of the problems we've been facing for so long here in the crypto space is the ambiguity or the lack of clarity from a regulatory perspective about whether these cryptocurrencies are considered currencies, securities, something else. So, whether or not you agree with these enforcement actions or not, the good news is a lot of that clarity that we've been looking for years now in the space should be coming. Other interesting points, the SEC has covered a range of allegations of security laws violations from the way platforms list tokens, offer staking services, lender strike lending agreements with their partners, and just straight up fraud. So, with the exception of that last, just straight up fraud, a lot of the areas of concern really deal with how these exchanges are managing and running their businesses. So, it's going to be interesting to see in the wake of all this, do exchanges look more or less like they do today, or are we going to see something radically different emerge? Some of the tokens the SEC's lawsuit is naming here are Cardano, Solana, Polygon's Matic, as well as a few others. So some pretty big coins or tokens that are being listed. Clara Medelli here, Kaiko's director of research, says this week's lawsuits, quote, will make every U.S. exchange fearful of the assets they have. So again, it's going to be very interesting to see what impact does all this have on these exchanges. Do we see them change the assets that they're listing, change the way that they list them? Do they have perhaps pull out of the US market altogether? Or does this go nowhere? As Paul Grewal says, we're confident the SEC has simply got it wrong. So it's going to be interesting to see. Another interesting thing to see is what comes after this. I thought this piece at the end of this article was interesting. It says if the SEC is following a thread, it's going to go after a comparable firm over similar issues. But if they're trying to go big one more time, they might go against a stablecoin issuer. And it talks about Paxos, who was previously the issuer of Binance's stablecoin, received a Wells notice back in February. So it looks like they might be next up on the chopping block, so to speak. What is a Wells notice, you might ask? Well, good question. Wells notice is a notice you get from the SEC that informs you that they've investigated infractions or failures to follow their laws and guidelines. Usually takes the form of a letter. And oftentimes, these Wells notices are sent out ahead of any kind of enforcement action or lawsuit. So, Paxos received one of these back in February. It'll be interesting to see if maybe they're next up in the SEC's crosshairs. The response to this is kind of interesting. Coinbase's CEO, Brian Armstrong, has confirmed that he has no plans for Coinbase to delist any of these coins listed in this lawsuit. He says, quote, we're going to continue to operate business as usual, and those assets are going to continue to trade until the court makes a determination. So he's really waiting to see what the courts determine rather than taking proactive action. Kind of an interesting approach. And again, some of the coins named include Solana, Cardano, Polygon's Matic, Filecoin, etc. So Coinbase kind of taking a confrontational stand here, forcing the SEC to prove its case. So very, very interesting. Be interesting to see how all that turns out. Another interesting article just kind of talked about the change in the overall crypto or Web3 job market. Adam Jackson, the CEO of Brain Trust, I think sums it up pretty well here. He says this is a brutal correction. Crypto and blockchain firms have been laying off employees in swaths, sometimes by as much as 30%, from big exchanges such as Coinbase and Kraken to smaller firms like Anchorage Digital. And I think this is kind of interesting information. If you're like me, if you're currently looking for a job in the Web3 or blockchain space right now, keep in mind the market has changed. right? With fewer roles open and a growing pool of job seekers, startups, firms with 100 people or less, are looking for hustlers and self-starters when it comes to bull market roles like marketing and sales, meaning if you want to get out there, want to land a position in Web3, you have to be very, very proactive, right? It's not just enough to send out resumes and hope somebody calls you back. Some candidates are from institutionalized and working at a larger company. Well, at a 50-person startup, you can't delegate. There's no budget for that. So they're really looking for people who are self-starters, self-motivated, need very, very little management or oversight, probably skills and abilities you really, really want to highlight on your resume or CV or portfolio if you're looking to move into the space. Developers are still in demand, plus privacy gurus, cryptographers, and system engineers. Anyone building new protocols, layer twos, infrastructure is where most of the roles are right now, says Nako Mabel, CEO of FinTech Recruiters. There's still a lot of people who want to be Ethereum killers. So definitely still opportunity in the space. Certainly nothing like it was a few years ago, but still opportunities out there. You just got to be a little bit more proactive, a little bit more of a self-starter. So as always, curious to hear what you guys think. What do you think about the SEC's enforcement actions? What kind of impact do you think that's going to have on the larger blockchain crypto market? Are you looking for a role in Web3 right now? How's all that going for you? Do you have any tips or advice or tricks to share with anyone else? As always, would love to hear your thoughts. Be sure to leave them in the comments. Until next time, this is Chris Bennett, your blockchain beard guy. Take care.